even if some of the themes were like basically stated, it was just right in not making me feel like it was shoving it down my throat with a large spoon.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of A Lost Plot, the podcast by storytellers for storytellers, so that we can tell better stories ourselves. As always, I'm your host, Maverick, and today we have back with us our co-host, Avalon, and one of our favorite guests, Patrick Abanto, to review the recent release of Frankenstein, the 2025 release from Netflix, which was directed by, and also the screenplay is by, Guillermo del Toro. If you are any fan of like the horrors and mysteries that we occasionally delve into, we thought, we have to go and pull Patrick out of his slumber in the deep depths of whatever bowels of the universe that he decided to go off to and, bring you some original thoughts from the other world. And so here we are today talking about Frankenstein.
We did a special
Patrick.
trip to the Mountains of Madness to find him.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
You flatter me. You definitely flatter me. You said original thoughts, and I will never claim fully original thoughts.
The disclaimer at the beginning.
I am but a catalyst. I am but a catalyst for all of the information that I pulled together.
He just channels the thoughts.
I just channel it.
Yeah. For the greater beings of the universe.
They're there. I know it. I know it. I can feel them. Anyways.
All I'm hearing is a catalyst for anarchy, so, that's Oregon. Anyways, we're going to review Frankenstein today. So, Patrick, you want to start us off with what your impressions are and rating for Frankenstein is?
Sure. I guess it's a little difficult, having read the book a few times in my childhood, to rate it highly, fully based on its source material. When I first saw the trailer for it, that it was coming to Netflix and everything, and I saw that it started in the Arctic, I knew it was at least not going to be following the 1931 story of Frankenstein, but instead the actual Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. I thought it was enjoyable. I thought it was an enjoyable movie. I cannot say fully that I am content with how it handled the source material, but I enjoyed the movie overall. Out of 10, I'd rate it 7.
Okay, there you go. It's pretty high praise. There we go. Avalon, what are your thoughts?
It's been a while since I've read the book. But even from what I remembered, I do remember like how the book starts and how like some of the key moments. And there's definitely like this, and I also haven't seen the full disclaimer, I haven't watched a lot of Frankenstein movies. I've seen a few. So, but I would say this one of the ones I've seen is definitely more faithful to the book of the ones I've seen. So now it's not completely faithful, as Patrick pointed out. There's definitely a few moments like, oh, this didn't happen, or this, like, they changed this. I could tell. But even with that being said, they did handle the themes of the book very well. And I really enjoyed how they handled some of those key character development and key moments. So, I liked it, and I gave it a 7.6. So, out of 9.
Okay.
So
there you go.
Not complete anarchy, Maverick. I'm still sticking to the 9-point system.
That's
I
true.
create my own system now.
Yeah. I didn't
Like,
say
out of 3, I liked it 7.
Out of 3, I liked it 7. We had multiple rating systems happening at the same time, and I mixed up the papers. But
Exactly. No, so we use the 9 points on this podcast.
I forgot about the 9 points. I apologize.
It's
It's been a long time, guys.
That's true. That's
I've
true.
been kind of gone.
No, it's honestly, this time it's forgiven anyways, because I'm looking for a little bit of feedback more on myself as I reviewed this.
Anytime.
I did
Gladly.
recall every time. Okay. We're not going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons here. We're talking about Frankenstein. So, in this film, when I watched it, I did recall what Avalon said, where I thought, oh, there's a lot of things in this that are similar to the books. I distinctly recalled the cabin, if you will, where there's the old man and the little girl. I recalled the situation regarding the Arctic and all of those things. And so I was looking at several moments in this film and going, oh, wow, this is very true to the book. And I was surprised because as much as, sure, there are things that are inaccurate, but this felt more true than maybe a lot of other books that I've seen or movies that I've seen, and how inattentive they tend to be, where they take their own creative liberties. This one I didn't feel went quite as far astray as what I've seen. And I was very disappointed, to say the least. This is one of the few times where I was watching a movie and I would oscillate between I don't want to see this because I don't like blood and gore to I don't think this is interesting at all. So
Wow.
this left me with a solid 4.45
Wow.
as a review. So I am open to being changed on my opinion. I would love to have my opinion changed, but it left me with more questions than anything, where I went, I don't know what this means about Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, because I think that Frankenstein asks a lot of good questions, and like there's a lot of thought-provoking ideas around the whole story of Frankenstein. But in regards to the raw elemental nature that we saw manifest in this story, it made me go, I don't know about this story. I don't know. I don't know if this is necessarily a quality story worth being told, at least in this medium that I saw. So, happy to be convinced otherwise, but that was my takeaway. So we're going to get into it, as we always do. But before we do, we always like to give you guys a little summary of what it's about. Because if you don't know what Frankenstein's about and what we have our qualms with, or what do we have our happiness about, or what we're excited for, you have to know. So, Patrick, you want to give everyone a summary of what Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, as manifest in Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein of 2025, is all about?
You'll get his name right eventually. So Frankenstein, 2025 by Guillermo del Toro. It follows Mary Shelley's book. I'd say somewhat faithfully. It does cut out a few key details, but the framing is the same. We open in the Arctic, where an Arctic exploration ship, comes across Dr. Victor Frankenstein. He's very badly beaten up and damaged. He's got a prosthetic leg, and they pick him up. And the creature, people often say that the monster is Frankenstein. No, it's Dr. Victor Frankenstein, and he's simply referred to as the creature. The creature chases them onto the boat, and they eventually rid the boat of the creature by dropping him into the ocean for a time, where Victor Frankenstein then begins to tell his story. And now we begin the majority portion of the story, which is Victor Frankenstein's story about how his mother's death inspired him to essentially beat death. He wants to, instead of letting the people that he loves die, he wants to find a way to bring people back. And this obsession becomes a bit of a god complex in multiple different dimensions of the word, or of the phrase god complex. He spends his time madly obsessing over resurrecting the dead, and we fast forward to him in the future, in a sort of courtroom setting where they're saying that his experiments are unconscionable, things like that. And he meets Christoph Waltz's character. By the way, Christoph Waltz is a fantastic actor. I just have to say, he's so funny all the time. Even when he's supposed to be scary, like in Inglourious Basterds, but that's just me. When he meets Christoph Waltz's character, he introduces himself as his, and this is a little detached because of how the relationships get a little vague for a moment. Christoph Waltz plays as the uncle of a woman who is engaged to Victor Frankenstein's younger brother, William. And Christoph Waltz also holds the same interest, and I'll say shares the obsession for his own particular reasons as to why the dead should be resurrected in the first place, or how you can bring life back to cadavers. Christoph Waltz's character, I'm blanking on his name, but I will have
Heinrich Harlander, I believe is Harlander.
Harlander.
Yes, Harlander.
Harlander has his own motivations for seeing Victor resurrect the dead, or build and put life into a constructed body. He funds the whole operation. Victor Frankenstein kind of has this, what seems to be an attempt at a love triangle with Harlander's daughter Elizabeth, who's is engaged to his brother, Victor Frankenstein's brother. That doesn't go anywhere. Victor Frankenstein, in his more or less, alpha male rage, puts all of his effort into creating the creature, and he is inevitably successful after Harlander plays his hand and explains that he wants the creature to have his mind because he is afflicted with syphilis. And we're not going to go too much into the details of that particular thing. Harlander dies, but the creature ends up coming to life, frightening Victor Frankenstein quite a lot and leaving him feeling hollow. He underestimates the creature because he tries to angrily teach the creature, and it is not receptive. It only knows Victor until then it learns the name Elizabeth. And he's not really there enough to care that that means anything. And in his regret of what he has created, he blows up the tower, which houses him, the experiment, and the creature, and loses his leg in the process. Then we come back to the ship where Victor Frankenstein continues explaining his story, and the creature makes its way onto the boat and says, "He told you his story, let me tell you mine." And now we go to the creature's story, where pretty faithful to the book for this portion, where the creature escapes and nature doesn't seem to pay him any mind. The animals like him. They allow him close by, and he's able to hide in a family's grain, like a grain mill, between underneath the gears and stuff. And there he's able to observe a blind elderly man and a little girl as he teaches the little girl words and how to read, and he eventually is able to pick up on those as well. He stays there for the winter. The family leaves except the old man, and the creature is able to go in and speak to the old man because he's blind and doesn't know it. The old man is his first friend. And then out of nowhere, the only violence in the movie that truly shocked me, the old man is killed by wolves, and the creature definitely does the same to the wolves. Wasn't expecting that, but it definitely hit. So the old man dies, the family returns just in time, a jaw is removed, we're just going to leave that there, and the creature is shot and killed, but then comes back to life because he is cursed to live no matter what. He is very discontent with this, finds Victor Frankenstein after figuring out what he is and where Victor Frankenstein lives, and begs Frankenstein to create him a partner, a lover. And Frankenstein, deviating from the books, denies him this, and in the scuffle of things after the creature essentially tells him, if you're not going to give me what I want, I will bring you death, throws him around, and oh yeah, there's another character, Mia Goth, who is Elizabeth, as mentioned earlier. Mia Goth and William are at their wedding, which is deviation again from the books where Elizabeth and William are getting married on that day, but Mia Goth finds her way into the room where the creature and Frankenstein are confronting each other, which is, I'm being gracious, Victor Frankenstein is getting thrown around like a rag doll. In the scuffle, Victor Frankenstein shoots at the creature and hits Elizabeth, mortally wounding her. She doesn't die immediately. The rest of the party comes up, and William is also killed, stating the most obvious theme of the movie, that Victor Frankenstein is the real monster. Frankenstein chases after the monster after William dies. William is, I'd just say, the mouthpiece of what everyone was thinking. Frankenstein follows the creature to a cave where Mia Goth's Elizabeth dies, and Victor Frankenstein swears to follow him to the edge of the earth, but that he will also live in fear, is what the creature tells him, because he's actually going to be hunted by the creature. Then he chases him essentially into, or past the mountains, past the forests, inevitably taking them to the Arctic, where we see where everything first started at the beginning of the movie, and the whole confrontation is stated. Victor Frankenstein and the creature have a long conversation about forgiveness. Frankenstein apologizes. The creature forgives him, and Victor dies. The creature takes leave of the boat and frees the Arctic explorers, and the movie ends.
Patrick, if you're going to do a play-by-play of the whole movie, you might as well just read the book. Out to us right now.
All right. It was nearly noon when I arrived at the top of the ascent.
Okay, no. This is not a live reading.
No, we're not doing that. Live tweeting. Yo, it came to life?
Ew. No. Yeah, so let's get into it as we always do, right? That's a pretty thorough summary of the film. And he also did very good at differentiating between what is relatively accurate in the books versus what is not, which could be helpful for an analysis of this film, especially for those who are particular about the authenticity and accuracy of what we're talking about. So let's get into it. Start off with that opening scene, right? You start off with the idea of the background of Victor Frankenstein, how his mother was not loved by his father, and then his younger son is born, and all of that good stuff. And I suppose probably in the relevance to that opening introduction, you also have the background of Victor Frankenstein becoming an adult and showing the partially alive cadaver. What are your thoughts on that opening scene, Patrick? Give us your first thoughts on this film.
So I'm going to give you the thoughts because I've seen it 3 times now, showing 3 different people.
Oh, snap. Okay. No big deal.
I saw it in theater. I saw it in a theater on Halloween night. Best time to watch that, by the way.
There you go.
Theater on 33mm film. Fantastic. I'm going to go with what my first impression was from the theater, and his monologuing at the court, 100% for me. I just read as I was supposed to. Is pride? It's just pride. He's running by pride. That's the establishment of his God complex. Is right there, especially because he so blatantly says that if God can't do it, perhaps God is inept. An actual line by him, and that, to me, it gets the message across, and it also definitely shows you that, hey, maybe despite being the main character of the movie, or one of the two, maybe he's not a good guy, which is, you don't see that as often. He's not like an anti-hero or anything. You just learn to hate him, and it starts right there.
Right.
My first impression was that. It establishes that he's not likable at all.
Yeah. What were your thoughts, Avalon? Did you have contrasting thoughts, or did you pretty much agree with what Patrick was saying?
I really liked my first thoughts when watching it is I appreciated how it seemed to be following the opening of the book, where we start in the Arctic and seeing the ship, and then you come across Victor Frankenstein in the cold, and then they bring him in to, and I really like how it starts off with the creature being the fearful thing in the night, the thing that scares him. It's killing men and causing damage, and they barely get it into the ice and sink it.
Right.
But then, as the movie progresses, and as well, since we've already talked about it, I love how the movie flips it towards the end, where it's almost like once you've gone through the whole story, the roles have more or less reversed. Where it's you stop seeing the creature in such the villain negative light, and you start seeing Victor Frankenstein more as this is the results of his actions, more or less. And it's the roles have more or less flipped by the end of the movie. So I really appreciate where it starts and how it ends. It's and how things have changed over the course of the movie.
Can I add something here too, really quick? There was a thought that I had when I first saw the intro. When you first see, also, thing I adore, silhouetted shots. When you first see the creature approaching with whatever the heck he's wearing, the big cloak and everything like that, love that shot. But there was a thing that they did with some of the CG regarding his, embers coming off of him and stuff, that I didn't put 2 and 2 together immediately. It looked very ethereal, similar to what Guillermo del Toro has done in other movies like Crimson Peak. So I wasn't sure what was going on with that for the time being. The way that the cloak looked, the way that the embers came off of him and all that. And I was just okay, are we adding something different here that I wasn't aware of before? And then it explains it later. But the introduction with him having kind of that as part of the guise when he's walking in as maybe a factor of intimidation that didn't stop 3 to 4 very unlucky sailors, by the way. Horrendously unlucky there. The sound design also quality for if you really like hearing bones break. Yep. Yep. Oh no,
Yeah.
when we get to that scene, I'm going to explain some stuff. the scenes.
The scenes. That's hilarious. Yes. I mean, I think in regards to me, my only addition onto that is like going to Victor Frankenstein's history as a whole, right? It starts off with his background, which I think, especially in regards to some of the actors that we were talking about, some of them are excellent actors. You got Tywin Lannister, right, reimagined as the father of Victor Frankenstein. You know, I'm down for that, and I know he's a great actor because I've seen him act before, and I think this went to show more than anything how they had other areas of this film they really wanted to prioritize, right? And that comes to maybe a broader question about how to tell a story well. But I think especially at the beginning, you look at the lines, you look at the dialogue, it's very to the point, very cut to what we're trying to establish here is this son who loves his mother and isn't loved by his father, and his mother dies and all of this stuff. And I mean, I think they get from a verbal sense the point across, but I think from a more storytelling aspect, it was so this is what we're trying to tell you that you don't necessarily get an emotional or relational attachment to Victor Frankenstein's character as much as you get an understanding of in a very basic sense of where it came from. So, and I think that was partially because they were trying to get to the monster and they were trying to push along to what the actual thrust of Mary Shelley's story is. So I didn't think that Victor Frankenstein's introduction, all that to say, was that compelling as a character. It only gets compelling once you get to the cadaver in the scientific arena, where he says, you know, basically, we got to figure out how to create life because God pretty much botched the job and can't, you know, make him live forever. So I don't know if you guys have pushback on that at all, but that was my initial impression of Victor Frankenstein's character when he's introduced.
I do have something to say to that.
Sure.
And that's that you can't forget the framing narrative and its context. He's trying to tell the story of his life as quickly as possible, knowing that the creature is not going to be gone for long. So he's trying to go through everything that would explain it, given that he knows that time is very limited and he wants to get the point across. And that's also being filtered by the fact that at that point in the framing narrative, he still believes himself to be in the right to be a man that thinks he can compete with and or outdo God. So he still has the pride, and he still talks in that particular way about his father, about his upbringing, about his mission, because as he's telling the story at that time, that's what he believes, because that's how he is. It's not until later on that is going to change. So we are getting it essentially not from, well, I mean, it's always going to be an unreliable narrator, but we are getting it from a very filtered view.
Correct. Yes, and that's why I don't necessarily take problem with it as a, like, whether or not it was congruent or whether or not it makes sense, because it makes perfect sense for the way that they told it. And I even was thinking about that. Like, if I were to tell the story of my childhood, I would probably give it in an abbreviated form similar to how he told it, right? I was saying more so from the critique of, like, are they trying to get us as audiences emotionally invested in the character of Victor Frankenstein? And I think if they were to try to do so more effectively, they would not tell it the way that they did in such an abbreviated fashion. But I think that was not necessarily... I think if you go to the idea that it's not the intent for you to become emotionally invested in Victor Frankenstein's character, then maybe that's perfectly why they did that. But then that leads to broader questions like, why did we spend at least 15 minutes on this background to begin with anyways? Why not start at the cadaver? So, anyways.
It all comes back, at least for me, it all comes back to the context. Victor's telling his story.
Sure.
It's not written in a way that's Guillermo telling the story as if he was, as if it was a narrator that wasn't in the story. It's not like Morgan Freeman narrating.
Sure.
It's Victor telling it, and he's prioritizing his phrasing. He's prioritizing everything that more or less is unfortunately filtered by his God complex. And for me, I'm sorry, I'll let you continue.
No, I agree. And definitely, like, he's going to phrase it in a way that makes him look like, oh, I am so misfortunate and all that stuff, which you definitely get for the childlike aspect to him, right? But I think that also, once again, delves into this idea of, like, and maybe you can answer this to some degree as well, because I haven't read the original Mary Shelley's Frankenstein in a minute, right? And so the question is like, I do recall some historical moments of his childhood being brought up. Is it pretty accurate to that in this telling of the story?
It's moderate. It's one of the things that I feel like we need to address very early on before we get here is I think I understand why certain things were cut out of the book. Is that, at least for me and pretty much everyone else I talked to about the movie, that watched Frankenstein, they said that it's like 2.5 hours, I think. 2.5 hour runtime.
Yep.
Landed the spot where the 2.5 hours did not feel like 2.5 hours, at least for most people that watched it. So when you're going through a book, especially a classical work of literature like Frankenstein, or if they did the original Dracula or something, you unfortunately, if you want to capture an audience, you're going to need to sacrifice certain things, including details about, unfortunately, the childhood, because you're trying to also not bore them or make the person go, man, this has been going way too long. I don't care if his mother was actually played by Mia Goth.
Right. Right.
But
exactly.
Yeah, you're battling that. You're battling the time as well. And yes, there is an aspect, as you mentioned earlier, of just get to the creature. We already have the tension there, and I like also a bit of a parallel of just get to the creature because the creature's just going to get to us. Just kind of thinking about that too.
Yeah, yes, exactly. In the Uno reverse type of ethereal sense, for sure.
The creature gets on the boat and just plays an Uno reverse card, and then Victor Frankenstein dies.
That'd be hilarious. Gotcha. No, I mean,
I would just like to add one more thing, because you mentioned like why we spend like, if this isn't as important, why spend 15 minutes on it. I would argue that the 15 minutes do establish certain themes in the movie, certain ideas. I mean, because there is definitely a running theme throughout the movie of like fatherhood and like the relationship between a father and son, because that's really what Victor Frankenstein's relationship with the creature is. And they started off with Victor's relationship with his own father, showing how troubled it was. Even if it doesn't like build empathy for Frankenstein, it establishes from the get-go this troubled relationship and where he comes from. This is what he grew up with. And then even feels it more so when he sees his brother getting the better treatment that he never got. And so like it just helps to amplify those themes and establish them from the get-go.
And so the themes definitely come into play later on too. Especially things like the lashings for getting the answers wrong. Victor Frankenstein quite literally does the same thing, mimicking his father.
Right. No, and definitely in regards to those thematic ideas, 100% they're starting them off from the beginning. And I think this also plays, once again, into like a broader understanding where, in my mind, it's like, especially if you're going to bring in a thematic element, you want emotional weight behind that. And maybe this is just my personal experience, because obviously you guys gave it a pretty high rating compared to me. I mean, 3 points higher on the 9-point system is like a whole 33% difference, which is the difference between like a perfect score and like a mediocre film in my mind. Right. So, it's pretty significant. But I think in my understanding of this, I look at it and I go, if other than the relationship between the father and his half brother, right, or his full brother or whatever, like the brother that was favored, right, and Frankenstein, I did not think there was a lot of emotional weight behind how things were portrayed. And maybe I do think there was emotional weight behind that, because that one was the most demonstrated by what actually occurred in the actions of the characters, more so than simply like dialogue that was pushed to you about what was going on in the middle of the film. So, I think that it's like there is, for example, emotional weight behind what was being said about him not having the most good relationship with his father, and definitely there's parallels between that and the creature that Victor Frankenstein creates. I just didn't think that like it was like, oh, I have a bad relationship with my father. See, look, my father's being a bad dad. Haha. If that makes sense. That's what you got at the beginning. I don't want to dwell too much on the beginning, but now I feel like we've gotten into it.
I was going to say the only thing I'm gonna say to that is it doesn't build a lot of emotional weight, And to me, it's only because it's Victor telling the story. It's very,
Sure.
woe is me.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. I get it. Your mom loved you and she died, and your dad kind of sucks.
Mm-hmm.
But don't obsess over your mom dying, and don't obsess over your dad hating you. That's what it established.
Yeah. Okay. I think that probably is the best way to characterize it. I guess I'm just also thinking like in the realm of a 2.5 hour long movie, where do you want to put your chips? Right.
Exactly.
So let's get into that. So let's talk about Victor Frankenstein, because he is, or well, I mean, I guess maybe we should just draw that into question now. Who is the main character of this film? Is it Victor Frankenstein, or is it the monster? Let's start with Avalon this time. Avalon, what are your thoughts?
It's both.
Yeah. It's both.
I mean, it does a lot of heavy focus on Victor Frankenstein in the first half of the movie, but the creature arguably gets his equal amount of story time in the later half. So that when their stories kind of merge, it's kind of about both of them at that point. It's not really about one or the other. So
it's about their relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Sure.
It's about the consequences of their relationship and what each of them brings to the table and how it affects the other. It's the real monster.
Well, yeah, and I think if you go into like the broader themes, that probably provides the greater clarity. I don't think it's worth getting caught into that, because the real essence of it is, what do we think of these characters and how well they're developed. So let's get into that instead. What are your thoughts on the character of Victor Frankenstein? Let's go with Patrick once again.
I loathed Victor Frankenstein. I loathed him as a character, but he did really well to make me just hate him. He did really well to just make me get so annoyed at his God complex ruling every thought, every decision, him misreading everything because it's all about him. He did it very well. It was very well done to make me hate him. And that's what they wanted, because that's kind of the point of the story. And it worked for me. I loathed Frankenstein, but the great thing is I loved to hate him. I didn't feel like I was like the character had a potential that I was ignoring or anything. Granted, like, again, for people that, and I'm understanding that as time passes, more and more people are not as familiar with the actual story of Frankenstein.
Sure.
So me going into it, I already know I'm going to hate him. I already know this. So there's a veil that has been lifted from very long ago for me, where I know where it's going. I know what's going to happen. So for me, at least with the standard of I know what the story is doing, it executed Victor Frankenstein, rather well. Obsessed.
Sure. Right. Avalon, what are your thoughts?
I mean, Patrick kind of summed up most of my thoughts in a nutshell. I was just like, dang, he said all the words I was going to say. Just like, okay, well.
Darn it, I did it again.
And he did it, and honestly, he said it better than I could. So it's like, well, what am I going to do now? Just like,
all right, there you go. Nice.
All I can say is ditto.
I mean, lonely at the top.
Yeah.
Nice.
And that bit's done.
That's hilarious. And that's all we have for today. No, I'm just kidding. No. I mean, yeah, I think he's definitely egotistical. I think that their representations is probably like more of where the discussion will come out regarding Victor Frankenstein and what he means. So the egotistical element of him is shown from the start. It's not like he's completely devoid of interest or desires or passions outside of like his own necessarily self-interest. I mean, you see that in small ways where he finds the butterfly and gives it to Elizabeth and shows, oh, see, I'm interested in what you're interested in, and things like that. And even in a small way at first to how he's treating the monster, he has some level of teaching him and caring for him, saying, oh, this is how you do things. So there is some degree that he has interest in other people, and it's not like he's completely devoid, heartless wreck, but at the same time, for the most part, even with those small bits, it doesn't really redeem him to a large degree, because he pretty much is still a piece of crap, and most of what he does is devoid of value outside of his own self-interest at the end of the day.
I was going to say, having perceived interest in another person or in other people, does not mean that you are interested in them.
Yep.
It is an action versus an intent or a motive. Victor Frankenstein likely saw Elizabeth's beauty and wanted it for himself. And so while he was showing kindness and interest in her as a person, it was ultimately because he was trying to take her away from his brother.
Right.
And then inversely, him teaching the creature, attempting to teach the creature, it kind of betrayed what his full intent was. He wants to teach the creature to prove that it's intelligent, that he can create a life that is considered intelligent. And in a sense, it's kind of a Tower of Babel type thing, where he has just reached just about the top of it, but he wants to make that final step to reach what he would believe is godhood. But it's not working, and that frustrates him and brings him back to being like his father. And that's when he starts having his regrets.
Yeah, well, and it's going back to like an understanding of life and what does it mean to create life. And he, in his ways, is trying to make something in his own image, right? Something that looks like him, talks like him, speaks like him, thinks like him. And when he can't really get over that little edge, right? He can't even get the creature to think and speak and talk like him. He starts to get pissed off, and he goes, "Well, screw this guy." And especially as his brother and potential sister-in-law come around, it starts to become a bigger issue. Almost, he realizes
almost sister-in-law.
Yeah. Coulda, woulda, shoulda type scenario. Anyways, so
not as Victor.
Okay, yeah. Other character in this film.
Victor, you could have had that.
Well, yes.
Oh my goodness.
Anyways, yes,
my bad.
He's, and it's interesting. Actually, this would be the appropriate point, I would say, in the review to talk about Elizabeth and talk about his brother and even talk about the Count, because to move on would to be bypassing them to some degree to move on to the monster, who I think is the other main character in this whole discussion. So let's talk about those characters instead as a little foray, because after Victor finishes his side of the tale, which is about halfway through this film, they don't really show up at all after that. So they at least
show up for maybe a
combined
2 minutes after that. But
exactly.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts, Avalon? Go ahead.
We'll give it enough about William to give the impression that he cares about Victor, and Victor seems to at least outwardly show care for his brother as like their family. He wasn't like, I find him like super compelling, but I found him interesting, I guess, is like the best way to describe his brother. It's like, okay, like in a way he brings out like another side of the way I saw the side characters in this movie is like, I feel like they're drawing out sides of Frankenstein, really, about Victor. Like, they were there, and we see how he reacts to these individuals and what they do. William, in and of himself, like, his only real goal we know of is Elizabeth, whereas, like, he wants to marry her. He doesn't, so far as helping Victor, he doesn't really have a whole lot of motive in helping him, aside that their family. That's just kind of glossed over. Harlander is definitely very well developed, especially considering the secret he hides. In fact, if there's any plot twist in this movie, it kind of comes from him, where it's like, because he doesn't reveal why he's helping him till the key moment, and you're like, oh. And of course, Victor is upset because he doesn't want to do this. Not because it's immoral, but because Harlander just revealed that his brain is less superior to what he already has.
That's hilarious.
Well,
I will say this is one of the few areas that I thought I had a lot of respect before we get to Patrick's thoughts on this. I had a lot of respect for the film in regards to giving that little red herring that you think, oh, okay, that's what this is about. They ended up, doing that little twist on, where I think that the red herring definitely caught me, at least. And he says that he helps to develop weapons. right, in the film. And so the initial thought when he's talking about bringing cadavers back to life or bringing humanity, it's like, oh, he could have, whether it be making a lot of money from bringing people back to life after they die to, having for all we know, an undead army that helps him to wage war on other people. Like, it could go any number of directions, but it's like, as soon as you have the money incentive and war combined with bringing people back from death, it's like there are multiple ways this could go that could be very lucrative for this man. So when he said, oh, I will fund this, I just asked for one small favor, you go, oh, clearly he's going to have financial incentive here, and I got that red herring. And then, of course, turns out that's not the case at all, which I'll let Patrick or either of you reveal. But yeah, I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are. Patrick, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm gonna go briefly for each of them. William, to me, well-intentioned. He has good intentions. He's a bit gullible because Frankenstein tells him to stay at the weapons manufacturing while they make the pure silver rods, and he just does it, not knowing that Victor's intent is to take Elizabeth away. Elizabeth was a bit more complex in the regard of she kind of brings heart to the situation, but is also what I believe she was curious about Frankenstein, not in a romantic way, but Victor read what he wants, and that was that he wanted Elizabeth. I mean, let's not go around that. Herr Harlander, I love Herr Harlander. Because, yes, you have kind of like, for me, I wasn't thinking they were going to go the route of he wants a weaponized undead in that regard.
Sure,
because
that was just like an example, but yes.
Yeah, as an example, I was like, oh, that's a very 1940-something Germany. But that's not this point. But I knew there was a card to play, and I don't remember if his reveal was in the book. I don't believe it was.
Yeah, that was another thing I thought you might shed light on, because I didn't recall him being like this being a motive for him.
I don't believe it was in the book, but I could be wrong. That's why I've been reading it again. It's also me basically going fact checking. I didn't get to finish it before I went and saw the theater, by the way, but that was my intention. But the reason why, because as I mentioned it briefly, he has a disease, and it is a late stage of a particular disease. Syphilis, which, apart from how it's contracted, one of the things that tends to happen with syphilis is if it goes untreated for long enough, it becomes what's referred to as neurosyphilis, which causes severe bouts of brain deterioration. And his motivation was that essentially Herr Harlander wanted his brain put in the creature. To me, that kind of seemed more of a nod to Young Frankenstein. I don't know if you guys have seen Young Frankenstein.
I have.
You have? Okay. So brains were a huge part of that, and they weren't terribly big in this particular rendition of Frankenstein. They did well being splattered on pavement, basically, is what brains did here. Yeah, his whole idea was like, I'm going to talk with you because I discovered something, the fifth pressing or whatever, where it was the lymphatic system, and he withholds information as to what his end of the bargain is when Victor is successful, and he plays it right at the end at a very bad time because the body was already constructed anyways, but whatever. All that caution to the wind. He had syphilis and he wanted to live forever is what he wanted. It wouldn't work because Victor stated it correctly. Do you know what stage you're at? He said late stage. Then your whole body is infected. That's what it does. So, yep.
Yeah.
I like
so his whole and he went down the chute.
Oh yeah.
The place that he helped to fund ends up being his own downfall as he literally falls.
The monster he created was his
downfall. I have a question for the rest of you. That's when you first see that chute in the middle of the movie, the first time you see it, did anyone ever think like someone gonna fall down that?
Oh yeah. Like, I've seen enough movies to like see that and go, oh yeah, somebody's gonna crack their skull open down there. They're gonna fall. Something's gonna fall. It's gonna be a body or a few. I don't know yet, but it's gonna be someone.
It's just a little too convenient, and there's just no fence. Which it's like, why is there no fence? Who is the absolute idiot who designed this place?
Did they say what the building was originally? I feel like I missed it.
I think they
I
did,
don't
but you're
recall
right. It was
that.
a really brief moment.
I'm
Like-
gonna need to catch it again because I'll get the answer to you guys at some point, but I don't remember what it was. I was just like, this building is whack, but I love it because it's very Guillermo del Toro. It's very him,
Yes,
and there's
that's
no
true.
reason it looks the way it should,
Yes.
but it works for the story.
But there
It's
was,
like-
yep.
The building doesn't seem to serve any real function or purpose, as far as you can tell. But
Yeah.
it looks amazing.
I want to address a thing here. I hope you don't mind me taking the reins on this particular portion.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
The story, Victor Frankenstein, the story of Victor Frankenstein is going to lend itself to having a particular amount of brutality.
Sure.
He's disassembling bodies and stuff like that. And when I went to the theater, I went with my coworker and my wife. They both loved the movie, but this particular sequence they could not watch. They both looked away because there's a difference between like war gore and medical gore, medical violence and stuff like that. And so when certain things happened, my coworker leaned over, and here's some context so that people can understand me a little more and why this comment was said. Whenever I have a kind of procedure that's going to be done on me, I am not shy about it. I will look up exactly what they're doing. So, case in point, some people had issues with teeth stuff. I had a root canal, and my first root canal, I didn't know exactly what was going on. So I watched a ton of real-life root canal videos to know what was happening. And my coworker came up to me in my cubicle and saw me watching a video of a root canal. And he's never let that go because, Patrick just watches surgeries. So here we are in the movie, and, he's removing muscles from the legs, he's removing bones, reinserting, breaking, and he leans over and he goes, average video Patrick watches at work. And I'm just like,
true.
This is pretty. I mean, there's some realistic stuff in this. It was really good. It was really well done. Definitely not for the faint-hearted. There's gore from like aggression and violence in this movie, and then there's that. And people typically are going to be way more reactive to what is there when he's assembling the body than when Herr Harlander falls from the top of the tower. Another spoiler alert. If you're listening to this, hopefully you've watched it. Because, you'll have your own opinions anyways. Sorry, Herr Harlander falls from the tower and lands with the back of his head on tile and concrete. And it does what happens when a head hits concrete that I see.
Yes.
And there's a big difference between when you see that and when they're assembling bodies. And there's just kind of like a grisliness that was there. Of course, it's Guillermo del Toro that does it. There's like a beauty, and then every now and then he just does a thing that just goes, I can't. Ugh.
I would say it's more like I would say it's more like a morbid fascination that comes with it, where there is the fascination that comes with the creation of the body, and then every once in a while you see them just and something's gone. You go, oh crap! I did not want to see that.
Only one that got me is when he's like taking the leg off and he has to break the joint. That was the only one. That was the only one that I was like, oh, I think I felt that. And then I was fine after that. But
Maverick is having bad flashbacks.
No, I have multiple. I did end up looking away. There was like 3 things in a row that got me. It was like tearing something out, sawing off a limb, and then something else. And pulling all of the
tendons.
The tendons. And I went, no, okay, that's enough.
I think that was a reference to Reanimator.
Anyways.
I've seen too many movies, man.
I was done at that point. I looked away. I was like,
there's a lot of like medical, like medicine gore. There's a lot of that kind of stuff, and it's pretty detailed. What were you gonna say, Avalon?
No, I was gonna say, if it makes you feel any better, Matt, there's several scenes during that whole procedure I actually had to look away too, because like I was okay with some of it, but some of it I was like, ugh.
Weak.
Yeah, no, I
know just aren't as psycho as I am.
Yeah, I admit it. So I was fine with watching him tear apart the whoops for some reason. I don't know why I was fine with that, but it just was like watching it, like the whole like medical scene is just like,
I won't judge anymore.
Yeah, well, so Anyways, I mean, it is no secret that I'm not a huge fan of those types of scenes. So we're gonna move on because that doesn't, I think, affect the actual storyline. It just means that I
It's
enjoyed
just a
that part
warning.
much less.
It's just a warning.
Yes,
Hey, it gets
and a
gross.
warning.
There you go.
Yeah.
Patrick, we need to have you on more often. You're the only person who can make Maverick not know what to say for a few seconds.
I'm proud to hear
there's not
that,
a lot to
guys.
say to. There's not a lot to say to. I liked seeing him rip tendons off.
Those words never left my mouth.
Okay, anyways, well, let's talk about the monster. Let's talk about the monster, the one that he used these tendons to create, right? What are your thoughts on the monster? Avalon, let's start off with you this time.
The monster, or the creature, or whatever you want to call it. I really liked his journey, the progression of his character, because as Patrick said, it's very close to the book. You get this very innocent starting, where it's almost like a child, where it's like he doesn't know any better. He's just he is learning his world. He is growing. He is trying to understand. And Victor getting angry at him. It's like you see why he's getting angry, but you also feel bad for the creature because it's he's still young. He's still a baby in certain senses. So as you see his progression, you understand his steps of his journey as he comes into contact with all the evils and the cruelties of this world, and he learns to fight and stand up for himself. But then he also learns why he was created and what happened, and then he's looking for meaning in love, and he's discovered I was almost meaningless in my creation. And it's a really hard and tragic story for any character, and it does so well to make you empathize with the creature and make you care about him.
I'm in the same boat. The creature, I thoroughly enjoyed when he got to tell his side of the story, because he's a child. He's but a child. He's learning everything, and he, for most of the time, because he's narrating it when it's showing his portion of the story, he's talking about what he has determined between what he observed with the family, the hunting men, and the wolves. They do not hate each other, but violence between them seems inevitable. He's observing the world, and he's trying to make meaning out of what could be senseless, and he's looking at it and reading motivations and things. And he's learning. He's developing. And he still doesn't have a purpose until he meets the old man. And the old man is kind to him and is a companion to him, and then is a friend. And then, as all good things, tend to go, the way all good things go, the old man dies tragically by wolves, and it's not, you don't mourn it. He doesn't have the time to mourn that. But that was when he first got his meaning, and he wants companionship. And that's what it's all builds up to, is him gaining the courage and the understanding of when to go in and talk to the people, and then realizing he won't be able to talk to all of them, but the old man will understand them. And on the second watch through I did, or it was the third watch through I did, the old man immediately clocks that he's in the gears the moment he walks in. There's a subtle look he gives, and then I leaned over to my wife the third time because I was showing it to her brother, and I was like, he's deaf, or he's blind. All of his other senses are going to be dialed up more. He has brain space for all of his other senses in some way. He's gonna hear it, and that's what just happened right there. So he's not, the old man isn't oblivious. He knows that the creature's there. He just thinks it's a guy.
And he actually makes a comment to that where he's like, are you the one who's been hidden in I think it was in the gears or the Great Mill or something like that. Something that was very clearly an allusion to the idea that he knew he was there the entire time.
He knew he was there. And I was just like, when did he first figure it out? And then it was when he first walked in, I was like, oh, that makes sense. Right. Sensation.
Yeah.
But I think he is a good parallel to the development you see of Victor Frankenstein's character, because there's a genuineness and honesty, and unfortunately a lot of consequences for things that he doesn't have a choice of, and that's that he is he's a compilation of dead bodies, and it frightens people, and he gets punished for that, for being what he is. Whereas Frankenstein, being an ugly human being throughout, just keeps getting more and more, except Elizabeth. And also, I guess, a leg. But I feel like there's a lot of very good parallels between the two characters in their stories and kind of the way that life is for them.
Sure, yeah, and maybe this would be an appropriate time to broaden it in the perspective, because this is maybe where more of my personal critiques come into this, especially from like a narrative standpoint, right? Because I recall, especially talking about the themes of this film and how the themes of the story as a whole, right? They're very important and interesting themes to talk about. I mean, they've been around ever since Mary Shelley wrote the story for decades and eons, and everyone like loves to reenact or recreate the idea of Frankenstein in one form or another, right? Because of like the significance of this topic and this discussion. I think from like a narrative standpoint, kind of how I talked about at the beginning, right? I thought the beginning was a little trite and smushed together. This area was very much a 180 from what we were seeing previously, and it makes sense, right? From like from a if you're the way or the themes they're trying to tell, it makes sense. But two, it also meet from the dual perspective they're trying to tell, right? You have Victor Frankenstein. It's like, oh, this horrible things are happening. This monster comes into my life, does all these things, and then just exits scene, if you will, right? On the one hand. And then you get the monster and he goes, well, let me tell you my story. And then he tells his story starting off with, I was this innocent child in the middle of the woods, more or less, right? And you get then going on from there. From a storytelling perspective, it feels very disjointed in that you go from one very clear aspect of portrayal to one very different aspect of portrayal, and they're very differently paced in those regards, at least from the end of the first one to the start of the cycle. And I'm just not convinced that that's a very like effective storytelling method in a film format, right? Secondarily, I think that like the story itself became beholden to the messages they're trying to convey, which in one sense, normally, I would sit there and go, they don't talk about themes enough. I love themes. I want to hear more about themes and what you mean and what you're trying to tell us as audiences. And in this case, I felt like their whole idea of who is the monster and what does it mean to be a monster and like the upbringing of this creature is trying so hard to lean into the themes that I think that the broader storyline itself kind of sagged a little bit, especially in the middle. So, what are you guys' pushbacks on that? I'm sure you guys are definitely going to disagree with me on that one. So, Avalon, feel free to throw your daggers.
Well, I want to say I actually liked how they told the story. So, I personally, in terms of storytelling structure, liked how we start with Victor's story, and then we come to the monster, and then he tells his side of the story. Because in the original book, I think Victor tells the whole story to the captain, and at some point he heard from the monster, the creature himself, his side of the story, and so he relays that in his story to the captain, which is how the book tells it. I personally like the idea of the creature coming in and almost giving his verse, like, this is my side, this is what happened to me, more or less. So I personally liked how the story separates the two of them, and then at the end brings them both back together and twines the stories together to the end that brings them to the modern day in the Arctic. So I really liked the technique, and I thought it was clever. So that's my opinion. So
Avalon, I'm in the same boat. Tonal juxtaposition is one of my favorite things because it can be played for comedy or it can be played for parallel emphasis. So in this, actually before this, a movie came out recently that has a linear yet technically non-linear storytelling narrative, and that is the movie Weapons, which is essentially multiple different characters are in chapter format shown their perspective of a series of events that happen over the course of a few days. And each tone is very different. And this is a horror movie with a lot of comedy in it as well, so there's a lot of tonal juxtaposition with that. And it works really well. So I do enjoy when they can do that. What I really enjoyed about, and something that gets explained in Frankenstein, is that the tonal juxtaposition is kind of already explained as to why it exists there. And that's because when the creature leaves, when he gets out of the building before it explodes, he has no memory of where he came from. He has no memory of what happened at all. Instead, what you get is now play the beginnings of each of their stories. The tones are entirely different. He is in nature. He's about to pet a deer or an elk or whatever that was. I didn't pay close enough attention because I knew what was going to happen. Because all good things, apparently. But he's like one with nature, Disney princess-esque.
Mm-hmm.
And then go back to the beginning of Victor's story. And he's kind of in this ridiculously oppressive feeling home where his mother dresses in like ridiculously red and everyone's in black, and it's a beautiful setting, but very weird, very ivory tower kind of thing.
Yeah. He's wearing the red gloves, and he's got the demon images of the angel.
He really just seems like, and side note on all of this, he really seems like the Victorian era kid that I would so love to give a warhead to. The candy. Anyways, young Victor Frankenstein. When you go to Victor on his quest after he's obsessed, it's grungy Europe. It's so packed with people. It's so populated. It's dirty. It's gross. Everything sucks. Or it's very fancy. There's already juxtaposition there. And then you go to him versus the creature, and he's just figuring things out for the first time. And it's nature. He's learning the laws of nature. He's learning that wolves don't hate humans. He's learning that the humans don't hate the wolves, but that they need to kill the wolves because the wolves go for the sheep. The wolves don't go for the sheep because they hate the humans. They go for the sheep because they need food. Violence is inevitable. He's learning those things. The tonal juxtaposition, in my opinion, is inevitable because of where each character is starting from.
Sure. No, and I agree that there's going to be tonal juxtaposition. I don't have a problem, to be clear, and I don't want to get too caught up in this once again, because we still have themes and ideas and a lasting impact to talk about. But just to more clearly portray where I was coming from with this is I don't necessarily have a problem with juxtaposition as an element. In fact, it can be effective. Oftentimes it is effective. I think my issue with it in this case was I felt like they dwelt on certain things to the degree that I felt like it slowed the plot down to the point that you are almost doing like an emotional recalibration, if you will. Right, where you are sitting there going like, okay, now I almost have to think about this next part as a completely new film and then reintegrate them two at the end, right? Which I think might have been their intent. I think for the audiences, it also leaves a lot of a cohesion that is lacking, especially at that disjointed middle element. So, regardless, I think the question then becomes, do these two parts mesh into a cohesive whole that is incredibly compelling, right? And that's maybe the biggest drive of this entire discussion. So, what are your thoughts, Patrick? Do you think the themes and messages of I mean, I already know you think the themes and messages are excellent, but why do you think that?
Well,
and tell us what you think they are.
I didn't say excellent. I thought they were good. I can't kiss my hand and go, brava. I can't do that after watching it because it's Frankenstein, and it's done almost in a Magnolia level where it's two different tones that eventually converge at the same endpoint. But the fact of the matter is they do, and it makes sense on how they do it. It's just who's telling the story at the time determines what the tone is until they're both telling the same story, and that only happens when they get to the arc. And I think that they handled that part very well because at that point, the creature is basically saying, you see me as a monster, I'm going to be the monster you see now. And then that hard dynamite scene, that part goes hard. I love that part. For me, the way that it plays its cards where it's not like Weapons, or it's not like Magnolia in certain places where it's the two stories that are happening at the same time. Because you don't see what happens after Victor, or what happens to Victor after he blows up the building. It goes to, instead, the creature, who is in a completely different setting now, because we're now disconnected from whatever timeline Victor is stuck in.
Right. We
know that, I believe, the entirety of fall passes, spring and fall, because the creature leaves the house at winter. So there's enough time for a bunch of things to happen, and maybe you feel like you're missing out on that as well. because in the book you definitely are. You definitely are in the book. You're missing out on quite a lot. But the stories are different until they converge, where Victor could likely corroborate the story of what happens at the wedding when the creature crashes the wedding. In my opinion, Victor crashed the wedding, but that's just me. He did get slapped and deserved it, but but at that point they converge and the tones mix from that point on. Once they're back in the same area together and the creature is aware of who Victor Frankenstein is, then the tones mesh, and that's what's supposed to happen. And I liked that. I liked how they made it work. I still felt like stuff was missing. I did, but that's just because I read the book, and that's also because, and I'm not saying it's good, but Kenneth Branagh, the guy that did Murder on the Orient Express and all the recent versions, Poirot, made his own version of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, so aptly called Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. And it is a bit more like following the book, and it does touch on some of the stuff that this one missed. It also didn't go the direction that the ending themes went. So I'll just leave it there for now. I like the way the stories mesh and the themes are juxtaposed until they come together, and the two that are battling out on who's the monster essentially have the conversation, and it is determined who is.
And you think that's the main thrust, is who is the monster? Or do you think there's other relevant themes as well?
I think the main thrust that they see between themselves in the moment is who's the monster. But I think the full point of the story that Guillermo tells is not who the monster is, but can they be forgiven?
Right.
And that's Guillermo's take.
Right. Yeah, and I recalled that distinctly, partially because the forgiveness happens before Frankenstein dies in this film, right? Versus my understanding is that in the books, it's not the case. It's more or less after Victor's passing that there is some level of bemoaning that happens by the monster before he decides that he should also perish in some form. But Avalon, what are your thoughts on the themes and the ending of this film?
But the story it was telling, and for these particular themes, they're done very well, in my opinion. They're not amazing, but I think it did it well enough that I appreciated it, and I liked how it was done. Now, as I said, I haven't watched that many Frankenstein films. I've not seen the Frankenstein movie that Patrick has referenced just now. So, at this stage of my life, this is the most faithful one I've seen, but I'm willing to admit there probably are better ones. So, I am just
say that.
Oh.
I didn't say it was better. No. I'll just say it has some choices.
Okay.
I will say, of all of the Frankenstein movies that I've seen that are trying to follow Mary Shelley's, I enjoyed this one the most.
Oh, okay.
This one felt the most enjoyable for me to watch.
Nice. But you were saying, Avalon, I don't know if you have more to add.
I mean, not much more. I mean, I appreciate it. The themes are blatant in some parts of the movie, but for what the story was telling, I was okay with it, honestly. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't like I was upset, like, oh, you were so blatant and this kind of thing. It wasn't like they're shoving it down your throat necessarily either. It just was like, okay, people are just being a little on the nose with certain things. So it's like, okay. And the themes do follow from the characters' actions and from what's happening. It all makes sense. It comes together and flows from the situations and events and characters. So I was very happy with the themes and how they played out. So
nice. Yeah,
I had something written, but now I can't more about the themes, but now I can't find it in my notes. I'm like scrolling through trying to find it.
Can I add something to what you were saying about
sure.
They're not shoving the themes down your throat. For me, I felt like even if some of the themes were like basically stated and told, like, when William dies and he says, you're the monster, or whatever, I'm paraphrasing, and they tell you that, even when he did that, I didn't feel like it was heavy-handed punching me in the face with a theme. It was just saying it. It didn't hit me in the way of like, this is annoying. why are they telling me what I should be? No, I would have had
Mhm.
that if it was done with slightly less tact. I feel like it was just it was just right in not making me feel like it was shoving it down my throat with a large spoon. It felt balanced in that regard with them saying it. With them saying it, that's already kind of at a different position of like how obvious I want to be reading into it.
Mhm.
And maybe that's why for me it was like way more enjoyable, was it wasn't being ham-fisted. It wasn't doing that, but it also wasn't being so vague that, you know, I have to read into it after I watch the movie too much and then
That's
be like,
hilarious.
oh, like that was Mia Goth playing as the mom? Is this Freudian?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. No, I mean, I'm sure you could go down the thematic elements of saying, was that something they were going for here? And if you want to go down those subtleties, feel free. But
I could
we're
make stuff up. I could do it. I'm not going
right,
to.
right,
But...
Oh, we know
right.
you can.
That's right.
I'd be like, wait, that happened?
Yeah.
Didn't you see the UFO in the panning shot?
No. Yeah. I mean, for my part, I'm not going to dwell too long on it. I think that I would generally agree that the themes are pretty explicitly stated, but that's what you are going for in this one. Not anything too crazy, right? What you saw from any general description of what Mary Shelley's Frankenstein is about is what you got in this, and in some ways, that's what everyone's going for when they talk about a non-comedic discussion of what Mary Shelley's Frankenstein is about.
Yeah.
Is what does it mean to deal with death and life and bringing people back to life? What does it mean to be a monster? These types of questions are the ones that they very much put front and center in this film and made the discussion point. So, I didn't really have a problem with that per se. I think the bigger question definitely, honestly, actually leans into that, which is the lasting impact of this, right? And you said, Patrick, that this is maybe one of the more enjoyable versions of you've seen, even though it may not be the most accurate version. And I think that this reflects on what my initial thoughts were when I watched this film, is that I think the themes and ideas around Mary Shelley's Frankenstein are very interesting, very important, and very valuable, right? And in and of itself, because of that, you should experience Frankenstein in one form or another similar to this, at least at some point in your life, whether it's reading the book, whether it's watching a film like this, whatever. But it more or less made me less convinced than ever that like the inherent story of how it was manifest in Frankenstein was actually good. I mean, you said this is a better version. Obviously, you enjoyed it. Do you think this one was going to have a lasting impact? Do you think that the story in and of itself is like inherently a compelling story, or do you think it's more the themes that drive this?
I guess you're drawing a parallel here between themes and story as if they don't touch, I guess is what I'm hearing.
Sure. No, well, I think that they do touch, but I think that sometimes people get so microscopically focused on a singular idea that they want that to be more present in a story that everything else gets lost in the process, right? And for the sake of telling a compelling story, right, which is what this whole podcast is about, is like, how can we tell better stories ourselves? Is this a good example of that? Is this something where you think that maybe something was lost because we got so focused on telling the theme that Mary Shelley's going for?
I feel like, and this is going to kind of be like my overall statement about the movie.
Sure. Which I kind of
this
figured,
movie,
to be honest.
This movie
but go ahead.
is Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, but it's also Guillermo del Toro's version. And the primary theme you get in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein in the book is unchecked ambition, god complexes, all that stuff. In Guillermo del Toro's, he adds a thing that I think is relevant nowadays more than ever, and that's what is forgiveness, and can you be forgiven? And while it doesn't, in that regard, remain faithful to the book,
sure,
its overall focus on however many themes the book decides to present, I am a fan of when directors add their own things with respect to the source material. Case in point, The Shining, the original The Shining. Very different from the book. Very good movie, in my opinion. Different themes get covered or emphasized, and others get added that don't appear in the book, and blah, blah, blah. So when I look at it, I don't say that is just Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. I have to say that's Guillermo del Toro's take on it. And what he does with it, I'd say he does very well, and it's very effective. Because the themes that Mary Shelley touches on, they're in there. They're there. But they are secondary to, in my opinion, the primary theme that Guillermo chooses, and that's forgiveness. And maybe that's kind of his focus and what he wants to say with it. Maybe he read it and went, you know what? I could see it going another direction here, and I'm going to keep respect to everything within a time limit that I can get, and add this additional thing because it would also make sense. Maybe some people thought it cheapened it. I really enjoyed it. So yeah, to me, it's both. It's both Mary Shelley's and Guillermo del Toro's. And while it doesn't remain as faithful as it could have been, I'm very content with what it did regardless. So.
Yeah. No, for sure. And do you think people will think of this as like a great retelling of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein? Do they think it'll just be
probably
added to the list, or you think it'll inspire Frankenstein too?
No, there wasn't a bride in this one for Frankenstein, so hopefully we don't get that. But I also don't think Guillermo would do that. So we'll pass the torch to Avalon and put him on the spot and say, "Hey, man, you've been quiet."
I mean, my take, if I have anything to say about it, it will be remembered. Everlasting impact. I mean, my take is, I see books and movies as two different forms of storytelling, for one. And obviously, it won't be as faithful to the book in some ways, because you have a limited time frame to tell a story in a movie or on a screen. But you also have to tell the story a little differently, because in a book you can go inside people's heads. You can get like a deeper feel for their emotions on certain things. Whereas in a movie, everything is shown to you through characters' actions and expressions and what they do and how they interact with each other. And like it's just stories are told differently. And so, I mean, I really liked how they told the story of Frankenstein in here, even though it's a little different, because it's a very good visual portrayal of the story. Even if it takes some left turns at a few points. I agree with Patrick. I think forgiveness is an interesting theme, and I really do like it when it's done well. I think it is done very well in this movie. And even though it is added perhaps a little more strongly, it doesn't denigrate the source material. It doesn't take away from the original story. It adds to it. And I think that is what a good adaptation should do. It should add to the story, make it better, amplify it. So I really do like, I hope this version is remembered, has a lasting impact, because I really did like it. I mean, there's a reason I gave it a 7.6. It wasn't because it's a bad movie. It was good enough to get a high score. Maybe not the best version of Frankenstein done, but I still think it's a great one. So.
Yeah. No, I think that there's definitely. I mean, clearly you guys enjoyed the film a lot, right? That's great. I think that
One day, man, you'll enjoy a film. One day.
To be clear, I have enjoyed some films. But I do think that we've actually disagreed a lot on this podcast.
Oh yeah, but it's fun. It's fun.
It's so good. And I mean, this is no lighthouse disagreement, but I always respect your opinion. So, and if you want to hear about the lighthouse, just go and watch that mess. I will say, you actually enlightened me a lot on that one, to the degree that I took a lot away from that review. But
hey man, and you could have taken a lot away. But The Lighthouse is one of those movies where if you did, it may not have even changed if you liked it. You could have just been like, it's way more interesting. Still not going to ever watch that again. And that's fair and valid.
Yes, exactly. So,
by the way,
if
Patrick, he still hates it.
Oh, yeah, I figured. I could see the sneer. I could see it in his eye. He
Yeah.
twitched. He didn't.
I think the difference is I would at least watch it again now just to get a better perspective, and with that background, it actually might enlighten me a bit. I might understand things a bit better, but that's not today. Today we're finishing up
Frankenstein.
And Frankenstein. The thoughts are, I think that it at least was enlightening to watch to get that perspective right. I think the themes are very strong. I think that it's an important message to be had. Will I be watching it again? Probably not. Do I think that the themes in the book are probably more to how I personally envisioned it? Sure, but does that mean this is a bad retelling? No, it's not a bad retelling. I mean, a 4.5 isn't a bad review either. But it's middle of the road for me, and it's not necessarily one that I'm going to look back on with fondness personally. But I'm glad that other people do, and I'm glad that other people have a different perspective. And I think there's something to be had for thinking about Patrick's perspective and Avalon's perspective and disagreeing with me. It's well worth considering their points. I think they make some excellent ones. So, and I think that there's a reason we're having a discussion about a story that has been told, so long ago and is being recreated today. At the very least, that's worth considering. And that's what you got. So that's the pod. We hope you all enjoyed. We'll be back as we always are next week. We'll see you all then.